We're going to start with a 72 pitcher. His name was Rick Wise. And this is a traded card. It's a high series from 1972. And Rick Wise's story here is kind of interesting because he was basically traded for Steve Carlton, one of the most lopsided trades in baseball history. So Steve Carlton went on to be a Hall of Famer, a Cy Young winner, strike out thousands of people, have hundreds of wins. And Rick Wise was with the Cardinals, I think, all of 2 years. And Steve Carlton helped the Cardinals, or helped the Phillies, where Rick Wise was, helped them win the World Series in 1980. So it was a really lopsided trade. And the reason why this trade is here, and this is part of what I do live, okay? And please hit that like, please hit that subscribe button or follow on TikTok, wherever you are. I'm also on YouTube right now, Sideline Fans. So hit that like, hit that follow, hit that subscribe on YouTube. But the reason why this trade was made, and partly the reason why it was so lopsided, is the owner of the Cardinals was having a contract negotiation with Steve Carlton. And the Cardinals were willing to pay him, because of his 71 season where he went 20-9. They were willing to pay him up to $55,000. Carlton was demanding $65,000. Now, a little more information into this. If you go back a year earlier or 2 years earlier, Carlton actually sat out for a while because of the negotiations with his contract. So this was another year that there would be a huge contract negotiation. Carlton didn't like what the Cardinals were offering. So the Cardinals and their owner, Gussie Busch, decided to trade him all over, get this, which is almost a joke now. It's what, like 1 second of a commercial, but for $10,000, the difference of $10,000, a Hall of Famer, a great lefty, a World Series winner eventually, was traded for Rick Wise. The Cardinals got Rick Wise. The Phillies got Steve Carlton, otherwise known as Lefty. All right, so that is wanted to start off with that one. That's kind of an interesting story because they were even having contract negotiations back then. The next card here that we have is, and I'm sure if you are a Mets fan, you might recognize this person, but this is Davey Johnson. And he was the manager of the Mets in 1986 when the Mets beat the Red Sox in the World Series. That glorious Bill Buckner, between the legs, it gets through, the call from Vince Scully. But Dave Johnson was, this is him in 1972. He went on to play for the Braves in Atlanta, be a teammate of Henry Aaron, and actually he had great success there. He hit over, I want to say, 30 home runs with them the 1 year. So he had a great career. He was a 4-time All-Star, believe it or not. He was a 3-time World Series champ. So 66 with the Orioles, 70 with the Orioles, and 86 as a manager with the Mets. He's in the New York Mets Hall of Fame. He's in the Baltimore Orioles Hall of Fame. All right. Now, this next player, I'm sure many of you have never really heard of, but his name's Del Rice. And I have his card here for one big reason. He's with the Angels here, but he is a manager. Probably no one, I'm guessing, because of the age, or maybe some folks know, but Del Rice is very famous in Angels lore or history because of one big reason back in 1962. Now, he was a catcher in his playing days, and I think he started with the Cardinals. He might have, let's see if I can go through. Yeah, he started with the Cardinals. He went to the Milwaukee Braves, Chicago Cubs, Baltimore Orioles, and the Los Angeles Angels. He became a manager in 72. His claim to fame is he is the first player to be drafted by the Angels. Believe it or not, Del Rice, which probably no one has heard of, was the first player that the Angels drafted. So that might have led to some of their mediocrity mediocrity as they started their career actually in Los Angeles, and then later, a year later, I think it was, uh, moved to Anaheim, and now they're obviously they call themselves the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or something like that. Okay. Now in 72 in the Topps series, okay, they had a lot of managers. They had managers cards like Del Rice's card that I just showed you was a manager. Davey Johnson or Dave Johnson was a manager card. Here's another one. This is Pat Corrales. He was a catcher with the Reds. He was teammate. He was if you will, the second in command behind Johnny Bench of the Reds there. Now, technically, as probably most of you know about baseball cards, the 72 card shows the 71 season, but he was the backup catcher, I believe, in 71 and 72, and for quite some years. But he went on to be a manager, and he was a pretty good manager, if I don't say so myself. In 1995, they won the World Series. The Atlanta Braves did. He was a coach there. But he also was a manager with the Texas Rangers from 78 to 80. He was with the Philadelphia Phillies as a manager. And where I know him the most is he spent a good chunk in the 80s, 83 to 87. He was a manager of what was then the Cleveland Indians. That's where I know the name a little bit more from Cleveland. But he played for, just to let you know, the Phillies, the Cardinals, the Reds, the Padres. He also was a coach with the Rangers, Yankees, Braves, and the Washington Nationals. And the one thing it says here on TikTok, and I'm just updating everyone, if you're watching this, if you're seeing this, please like and subscribe. I think on TikTok, it's actually a follow. If you can do that, that would be great. I would love it. This is the first time I've done any live streaming on TikTok, so I'm a little rusty, and I apologize for that. I'm sure there's some comments, and I'm probably going to have to ask my son where I look on the screen because, as I said earlier, I'm actually using two video cameras, one for the YouTube stream and one for the TikTok stream. I want to condense that, but I wasn't able to get my computer to do live streaming for TikTok, which makes no sense, but whatever. Okay, the next player here, another manager, Gene Michael. Here is a shortstop with the Yankees. Let me get this down for the YouTube folks. Gene Michael would end up being a longtime manager and coach, like so many of these other folks. And he was a general manager for the Yankees. Actually had 2 stints with the Yankees, which is so usual for any sort of Steinbrenner team. He was a general manager 80-81, and then he was a general manager 91 to 95. So in some ways, you could say about Gene Michael that he was the one that kind of set the table for that 96 team to break out, that late 90s team to win, consecutive World Series for the Yankees. He was there from 91 to 95, so he made a lot of those decisions of the players. And then he also was manager with the Yankees from 81 and 82. And he was manager of the Cubs from 86 to 87. That's probably where I remember him the most because I live in St. Louis and we play the Cubs a lot. That's where I would remember him. He did not have what you would say a great career. He played with Pittsburgh, then the Dodgers, then the Yankees, and the Tigers. Like I said, he was a shortstop. He was your prototypical soft hitting shortstop back in the 60s and 70s, but look, whether you like him or you hate him, whether you like the Yankees or not, you got to give him credit, or a little bit of credit, for building those Yankees dynasties in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I'm going to remind everybody again, check out or like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow on TikTok. Would love to get that. Now, the next player here is someone, and I know that you're going to say, I'm sick of you talking about the Cardinals, but this is Bill Verdon. He was Rookie of the Year in 1955 with the St. Louis Cardinals, but he really went on and he probably, he was just a 267 hitter, 91 home runs. He was, I want to say he was an infielder. Yeah, he was a center fielder. I'm sorry. But he was really known as a manager. He was a manager of Pittsburgh back then, 72, 73, then the Yankees in 74, 75, and then of course they got really good 77, 78. Then he was with the Astros. That's where I know him a little bit more, 75 to 82. And then the Montreal Expos, 83 to 84. Now, he did win World Series, one as a player and one as a coach, both with Pittsburgh. So in 1960, he won it uh, for as a player with Pittsburgh, and then in 71 he won it as a coach. So again, a lot of these players and a lot of these cards that I'm going over are managers and coaches that later performed in the major leagues and had what I would say some success. Now, the next player we have here is Joel Coleman. He was a pitcher, not too bad. He was 140. He was 142 and 135. He had a 3.7 ERA. If I had those numbers, I would be very happy. Hello there, Triple X 10 Tayson Jr. Glad to have you aboard. But Joel Coleman was a pitcher. He played for many teams. He was an all-star in 1972. He played for the Senators, the Tigers, the Cubs, the Athletics, the Blue Jays, the Giants, the Pirates. He was, and I have a Bobby Bonds card coming up, but he played for, I mean, in the year 76, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from 76 to 79, he played for 6 different teams. I am doing fine, Extend Tayson Jr. I'm doing really well. How are you? But anyway, so he was, like I said, he played for a lot of teams. And he was a Washington senator, and I think we might have some cards that show that as well. And he was a coach for a while. So, okay, let's get to the next card here. I'm sure I'm boring everybody. This is Willie Horton. Willie Horton played for the Tigers for a bunch of years. He won a World Series in 1968 when the Tigers beat the Cardinals in Game 7. He was actually a really strong power hitter. He hit 325 homers over his career. I'll kind of try to get that a little bit closer. He batted 273, had 1,100 hits. He spent the majority of his career with the Tigers, 63 to 77. He's a 4-time All-Star. And I know he won in 68, and the Tigers actually retired his number 23. So he was quite revered. And apparently he batted 304 in the World Series against the Cardinals in 1968. And that was one heck of a series. Unfortunate for the Cardinals because it's where pitcher Bob Gibson struck out 17 batters in a game, but they did not win the World Series. So anyway, so he was with the Tigers for a while thereafter. Now we go to someone who you don't hear much about, but he was as valuable to those Mets teams in the late 60s and early 70s as anyone was. You know him, Willie Horton. That's pretty cool. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Now, the next player here is Jerry Koosman. And Coos he had another great career. He was 222 wins, 209 losses. His ERA was 3.36, and he had 2,500 strikeouts. So he was no slouch. And he was with the Mets from 67 to 78. So he was with that 69 team that won the World Series. Then he went to Minnesota, the White Sox, and he finished up with the Phillies. He's in the Mets Hall of Fame. Now, he's not in the Hall of Fame, but he was a 2-time All-Star, and the Mets also retired his jersey. So he was just one of those guys, just a lefty who put up what I would consider some pretty good numbers. Those Mets teams after, in the 70s were not that great of teams. And to have 222 wins, is really saying something. I don't know that, I don't know if everybody thinks about that, but, they weren't that great of teams. They really didn't start getting good again until the mid 80s when, they had Dwight Gooden, Darryl Strawberry and all those guys and Gary Carter as you might know and remember. Now, the next player here, and I pick him. Now, it's Tim Foley. He played for a lot of teams. He was a shortstop. He wasn't a manager. He played for the Mets. This is another Met. It looks like I have two Detroit Tigers. I have two Mets, but he was an infielder, shortstop, played sometimes multiple positions, but mostly a shortstop. He was with the Mets, the Expos, the Giants, the Mets, the Pirates, the Angels, the Yankees, the Pirates. So he really bounced around, but he did win a World Series with the Pirates in 79 when they won. Now, I do want to let you know that what's interesting is I guess he had a little bit of a temper. And where was it here? He was the manager of a team in Puerto Rico, and they were in the Caribbean World Series, and he was actually fired during that Caribbean World Series, because the general manager thought that he was disrespectful to him, which is kind of interesting. So he had a little bit of a temper that flared up, probably when he didn't want to. He did coach various teams. I think he also had, I think he was fired with the Reds at some point, and he got into a fist fight with Ron Oster, and that Foley needed stitches because of the fist fight. And Ron Oster was a fellow coach. So the two coaches fought, and then later Foley was relieved of his duties, if you will. Again, if you're watching this and you like it, please hit that like button. I really need the like button. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. That's mostly for the people on YouTube right now. But if you're on TikTok, hit that follow button. Would love to add more. I'm going to be doing this all the time now with both channels. Now, the next player here is Julian Javier. He was a second baseman. Let me just see what I'm doing over here. Wow, that guy's hot. Okay. Well, hey, maybe he is. Julian Javier, I don't even know if he's still alive, so we'll have to watch out for that. But Julian Javier was a second baseman. He played for the Cardinals. He won 2 World Series. In 64 and 67, obviously lost the one in 68. And he put up some good numbers. Now, he was actually suspended in a Dominican professional league because he punched an umpire. So, that was in his playing days, and he didn't like the call that the umpire was making, and he proceeded to punch him. So just a little interesting that way. Some of these guys, you don't hear of those stories as much anymore, I guess, because I don't know, maybe they're either no one talks about them or people are more civil. Not really sure. Okay, no, I'm talking about you. Wow, that guy's hot. Okay, no, I'm talking about you. Okay, go to edits. You're talking about me. Great. Okay, so the next player that we have here is Richie Hebner. He's kind of another infielder extraordinaire from the 72 set. He was here with Pittsburgh. He floated around. He's another guy that floated on many, many teams. He actually started his career with Pittsburgh he played in 68 to 76. So he won a World Series in 71 with Pittsburgh, like a lot of those guys did. Then he moved across the state to Philadelphia. Then he played with the Mets, Detroit. Then he went back to Pittsburgh in 82, 83, and then he finished his career with the Chicago Cubs. Now, his sort of claim to fame and why I'm bringing him up right now, and I'll get to that in a second. He was a coach for many minor league teams. What else? Hold on. There's got to be something else here. What was the other thing I was going to say? I must have lost it. Anyway, moved to third base minors. He had 203 home runs, 890 runs batted in. He didn't have a bad career, but he just bounced around a little bit. And I'm just trying to think. His batting average hovered at 200 when he was with Detroit. So he was at the Mendoza line. Finally, poor spring replacement. Okay. Well, it looks like He was fired after one season. Or hitting coach despite increases. He bounced around. He was a coach for some minor league teams, and he was a hitting coach for Tampa Bay, and apparently he was pretty good with them. But then he was fired after only a year. So anyway, so Richie Hebner, I thought there was more to that, and I apologize. We're going to move on to, I'm sure someone not many people are talking about, but Jim Wynn. Now his number 24 with the Houston Astros is actually retired. He did have a pretty good career. He had 291 home runs. He had 964 runs batted in. He did bat 250, but he was with that original Colt 45 team. If some of you know, or maybe some of you don't, that the Houston Colt 45 were the original team. And then they changed their name. They wanted to get away from the gun, and changed the name to the Astros. And he also played with the Dodgers and Braves and Yankees and Brewers. He was a three-time All-Star, actually, in 67, 74, and 75, all of which, well, actually not. He would have been an All-Star once with the Astros and then twice with the Dodgers. So he's just a kind of a lesser-known player. Let me see. Oh, and the one thing I wanted to say is that, just as a side note, in Apollo 13, there's footage in that video of him rounding third base. So that was sort of very minor little detail that I wanted to point out. So, okay, let's see. We are at just a few more here. We are now at Bobby Bonds, and let's be really honest. The claim to fame with Bobby Bonds is who his son was. And he bounced around. Now, he bounced around with six teams in the late 70s. There's a famous song called Talking Baseball where they say, and Bobby Bonds can play for everyone. So he bounced around like I was mentioning with the other player. So let me just see how this looks on YouTube. I apologize for that. Yeah, I gotta move that over a little bit. So yeah, that's Bobby Bonds, and he had quite an extensive career, probably most notably with the Giants. That's where actually Barry met people like Willie McCovey and Willie Mays and things like that when his dad was playing for them. And the other thing I wanted to point out is uh, the 19 what would technically would be the 71 Reds, who finished fourth. And here's their card. Now the thing crazy about it, if you really think about it, is this is a team card, but you tell me, and maybe I'm wrong. Yes, they're all baseball players. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bobby Bonds was a baseball player, um, mostly with the Giants. He played with the Cardinals. He bounced around. He was in the American League for some time as well. But so here are the Reds. Here's the team card of the Reds from 1972 tops. But I'm going to try to get close. Just let me take my time a little bit because I have two. You tell me, but it's almost impossible to see anybody's faces right here. Let me just show it up on TikTok. It's just impossible to show any faces. I mean, to really see anybody on this. So it's kind of, I know that it was kind of a traditional thing that they did with tops, but I just thought that it was relatively silly. Now, some of the key players on this, and this is before they became sort of the big red machine. At this point, they hadn't made the World Series. They will in a year or two when they lose to the Oakland A's. But as you may or may not remember, they won the World Series in 75 and 76, kind of the heart of the big red machine back then. And their catcher was Johnny Bench. Their outfielder, now I say outfielder, their outfielder was Pete Rose. He was an outfielder back then. He started as a second baseman. They moved him to the outfield, and then he finished his entire career as a first baseman, as probably anybody who follows baseball knows that. Sparky Anderson was their manager, and I'm just trying to go through who they had pitching. I don't think they had Tom Seaver yet in the 71 season, which, as I had mentioned earlier, in a 1972 card, they would be showing the 1971 season or the 1971 team. Their pitchers were, they had Clay Carroll, I think, who pitched for them later on. Let's see, am I missing anybody's? Christian, if you were to choose the most old baseball people, would you choose Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson? if you were okay, I'm just going to put this on the YouTube screen. If you were to choose Babe Ruth or Jackie Robinson. Now, there's a lot of conditions on here with that question, and that's a really good question actually, and that was by Christian R. Um, Babe Ruth has the biggest offensive numbers for generations, for decades. You know, the 714 home runs, he had well over 3,000 hits, his RBIs, all of those things. Okay. So he put up monster numbers. Now, because baseball, when Ruth was playing, was segregated, there is some debate as to what kind of numbers he would have put up. Or would they have been the same? And would have somebody like Josh Gibson, who was a catcher in the Negro leagues, would he have put up some monster numbers like Babe Ruth did? Plus, as you may or may not realize, in the Negro leagues, they didn't keep really good statistics. So, hey, Nathaniel, we're doing pretty good tonight. We have a lot of people watching. Yes, Alonso Garcia, I do like the Rangers. I really love Adolis Garcia, but I would pick Babe Ruth based on the numbers. But I think, in short, Jackie Robinson probably had to put up with the most nonsense. When he was playing both in the minor leagues and professionally. And one of the reasons why he wore a hard helmet in the field was because of some of the nonsense that he put up with. Now, just finishing up with the Cincinnati Reds. George Foster was on that team. I don't think George Foster's in the Hall of Fame, but he probably deserves to be. Hal McRae was a pretty good player. Tony Perez was a really good player. Lee May. It was kind of early for some of these people. Let's see who else. Hey, Nathaniel, no problem rolling in late. Again, now that Nathaniel's here, I want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, like this video. Nathaniel, I'm also streaming this on TikTok, but I have two cameras. So that's why when I put things up and I show things that I'm moving them around because one camera is not exactly, and I'm going to try to fix all that. So, but I would say that, yes, I like the Rangers a lot. I like their manager, Bruce Bochy. He's incredible. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a genius. He's one of my favorite managers of all time. I'm a St. Louis Cardinal fan, although I have a Baltimore Orioles shirt on. I just like teams, but I think Bruce Bochy is probably one of the best managers there's ever been. I mean, he's won multiple World Series now with two different teams. He's won in the American League. He's won in the National League. Everybody talked about Tony La Russa. I like Tony La Russa. He was a great manager, but Bruce Bochy is better. I mean, he just has more World Series. He's better. All right. And as Nathaniel said, let's hit that like button. Let's hit that subscribe button for people who are on. And then if you're on TikTok, hit that, I think it's follow on TikTok. Now, some of the things Topps did back in the day, let's see. Who's the best baseball? Okay, someone said F. La Russa. Okay, I get that. X, do you mean who's the best baseball player, or are you just saying it's the best baseball? It looks like Rich here doesn't like La Russa. Okay, that's fine. Especially probably if you're like a White Sox fan, because he didn't really help the team out. But one of the things, just jumping back to the 72, and then I can answer some questions and we can chat about some other things as well, is Topps used to do this thing, and it's so much easier now. I mean, I can do these things. You know, they can, when these coaches change, when Calipari went from Kentucky to Arkansas, if he was wearing like a blue jacket, instantaneously with AI and all that kind of stuff, they changed it to a red jacket and they had all these pictures. Well, Topps back in the day had sort of their own Photoshop. And I'm going to put this on YouTube. I'm sorry about all this, but look at his hat and then look at his jersey. Look at his hat. I know this bad camera on YouTube, but look at his hat and look at his jersey. His hat is a Boston Red Sox hat. It says that he plays for Boston, but can someone tell me Okay, here's the funny thing. Can someone tell me when the Red Sox wore pinstripes? And I'm going to answer a question that everyone may or may not even care about. All right, Dodger fan. Yeah, I lived in LA for 5 years. I became a really big Dodger fan. I went to multiple opening days there. I love going to Dodger Stadium. Okay, just to let you know, he played for Philadelphia, and then he also played for what looks to be, yeah, he played for the New York Mets. My guess is that they took a Mets photo with the pinstripes and they put the Boston hat on. But let's face it, the Red Sox never had pinstripes. So it's just kind of a funny little quirk in a card. Here again, we have the same kind of thing. And this guy actually played for the Yankees, but it's another Boston hat. And okay, for the Rangers, who's my favorite player? It's I always say his name wrong, Adalis Garcia, and it's kind of a homer reason. It's because he was a Cardinal, and now this season he looks all buffed up. I don't understand what's going on there. I hope that it's not what I think that it might be, but anyway, so this guy here, Danny Cater, has the same thing, but he played for the New York Yankees. And I have a couple other examples, not so much of the pinstripes, but just bad hats. If you look at this guy, Tony Cloninger, he was a pitcher. He has a really bad Cardinals logo hat on. You know, they sort of did it by hand. They just did all this by hand. So and I'm the other thing too about the Rangers, and I don't know if you were following this, Alonzo, is that I'm a huge Bruce Bochy fan as a manager. Like the Cardinals keep hiring these guys that were in their minor leagues to be their manager, but they're the St. Louis Cardinals. They have 11 world championships. They should be able to go out and get a Bruce Bochy. They shouldn't hire these guys from the minor leagues and have mediocre seasons. Now, here's a really bad example of what they did with Kansas City. This guy was with Iowa. So my guess is, well, let's see. Oh, he was with Oakland. So they really changed his. Yeah, they made his collar even black. So they probably took Oakland's green and made it black, but just a really bad hat there. So anyway, any other questions? I went to a Yankees Rangers game and Bruce Bochy he threw you a ball. Wow, Nathaniel, that's pretty cool. That's great. Wow. Were you sitting down low, or was it like were you sitting up higher, or where were you kind of sitting there? Uh Probably I'm guessing you were by the dugout or on the sidelines. But yeah, no, that would be great. He's just one of my favorites. I just think he was with the Padres, and I always thought he did an okay job with them. They weren't really great teams. Oh, by the bullpen. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I mean, he was a catcher, so he's used to being in bullpens, that's for sure. So that's really cool. That's great. So now are you in New York, Nathaniel, or are you in Texas? Or were you like on vacation for that game? You got the ball before the game, but and then just one other player I wanted to show you when we're talking Rangers now. Here is Lenny Randall. And if you look at Lenny Randall, and I'm going to put this up for TikTok first. I apologize. It's almost like a generic uniform. Like Topps didn't get the rights for the baseball logos, if you can see that. But what happened is this was a Washington Senator player right when they moved to Texas. And so they probably knew the colors would change and they knew the design and the logos would change. So they made it a very generic looking uniform for Topps. And these are all 1972 cards, which really show usually might be spring training of 72 or the 71 season mostly. So, and if you haven't, okay, Nathaniel, you're in New York. So you saw the game in New York. Oh, that's great. You know what? I've actually never been to Yankee Stadium. The closest I ever got, besides like walking by it, actually, I had a plane. This is a long time ago. A plane wasn't directly over it, but we were off to the side while a game was going on, and it was probably one of the neatest plane rides I've ever had because it just looked electric with the crowd and the lights, and the plane was low enough. We were kind of about ready to land at that point because I was flying into New York. Obviously, it was really cool. It was a night game, very cool. So, okay. So, does anybody have any questions for me? Does anybody have anything that they might want me to go over? Because the one thing I was thinking for tomorrow night, the show will be at 8 o'clock or 8:05 Eastern, and I was going to talk about baseball rappers and sort of the rappers over the years, like not rappers in music, but rappers in baseball cards. But I can change that. I haven't done much with hockey. I've done a little bit with basketball. Well, actually, I did hockey with the goalies, so I didn't really do much with basketball. I could get into that. I've done some football stuff. Does anybody have any opinions about that or anything that they would like to see? Because that would be very helpful for me. If you have anything, yeah, there will be a show tomorrow. I'm just trying to figure out what you guys kind of want to see. I can go into collectibles, like I said. I can go into like rappers. Again, not the musicians, but full baseball card wrapper kind of thing. So I can go into that, or I can do I can do all kinds of things. I mean, I like football and baseball. Okay, so is a football show pretty good tomorrow? Is everybody okay with that? Are you able to show 222 Donruss baseball? Yeah. Is there anything in particular you want me to talk about with the 2022 Donruss baseball? I'll write that down and try to get something. I'm sure I have something in it. If not, I'll do football. But is there anyone you want to look at, or anything that's interesting there? Just let me know. So Donruss baseball, football, and I'll probably make a decision sometime tomorrow and send that out. So if you subscribe, you'll be able to, I believe, see that on your YouTube page. You'll be able to. I don't know if I can do that on TikTok. I'll have to see, but I would love to sort of tease that. But it will again be 8 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night on Thursday, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. I'll be on again. We'll be either talking about football or 2022 Donruss baseball. And if there's anything else that comes up, just send me some sort of message. I'm on obviously TikTok and YouTube and would love to hear from you. You can always try me, and I will put my email there because I have another business that I don't mind putting my email out on, although you all probably will spam me now. But I'll just I'll change the O in com so it doesn't go if anybody copies the number. But there you go, right there, Nathaniel. If you just look at it as COM, you'll be able to get the email. It's just info at rhino305.com. It's a golf ball company that I own. I'm also a golf coach. And I'll probably be talking about those pretty soon as well. So anyway, I want to thank you all, Nathaniel, everybody on TikTok, Xton Tayson Jr. I don't know how to pronounce that. There's 3 X's. Alonzo Garcia. Let's see, Goated Edits, who I think had a little crush on me. And yeah, that's everybody. So thank you all very much. I'll be on TikTok and YouTube again tomorrow. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks.